Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? We still awake? We got any energy? Yeah? Happy New Year to you. My name is Jay Harrison. I'm the, social director at Team Envy, Dallas Fuel, Dallas Empire. We're going to talk to you about some marketing and events today. Show of hands if you've never been to an esports event before. You guys are liars because you're at one right now. Put your hands down. I'm going to introduce our panel today. To my immediate left, we have Kyle Stephenson from Influencer Manager at Gearbox. We have John Davidson, Director of Business Development at PRG. And we have Justin Varghese, Marketing Manager at DreamHack. So they're going to holler at you guys for a little bit, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. But let's just go ahead and get started right off the top. Like, tell us a little bit about yourselves and, your history with esports.
Is it on? Okay. I'm Kyle, like I said, Influencer Manager at Gearbox. Been in the industry for a good number of years now. Actually worked with John at GameStop back in the day. Then I worked at a small studio in Houston for a couple of years, and then now I'm here at Gearbox.
My name is John Davidson. Am I on? Yes. Okay. I'm fortunate to work for Production Resource Group, the world's largest entertainment production company, and I lead our esports vertical there globally. Before that, I was head of partnerships at GameStop, had the opportunity to lead partnerships with Team Envy, Optic, and Complexity, among others.
Hey, y'all. Justin Varghese. I run marketing in North America for DreamHack. I'm coming in actually right about my anniversary. I started January 15th, 2019 with them, so it's been a really good year so far. Happy to have broken records for both our Dallas and Atlanta show, and right now we're ramping up for our first ever West Coast show in Anaheim. Before I was with DreamHack, I've actually had a pretty crazy past. I started off back in 2014 as a play-by-play commentator in Smash Brothers before I eventually transitioned and covered about a dozen different titles, eventually working with companies like Activision Blizzard and the Pokemon Company. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm really excited to be sharing the stage with some amazing people in this space.
Very cool, very cool. Well, let's just kind of jump right in. Like, where do you start with something like this? Like, how do you go about creating and activating, such large-scale events? Kyle?
Honestly, a lot of it is come up with a cool idea, pitch it, and see what happens. I mean, you got to take risks, and strategic risks, and that's what I did at GameStop. This is before Twitch was really blowing up. Things were before the PS4 and the Xbox One were out. A lot of that mainstream knowledge of what live streaming events and gaming events were really just catered to like E3 and then some of the other competitive scene events out there. So I pitched doing a live stream from our own expo, and right from there, it became something that we did for a number of years. Actually, Corey in the back was my very first host, which is super cool. It comes full circle. So that's my big thing, is take risks, but be smart about it and see what you can do for the future.
Calculated risks.
Yeah, exactly.
Calculated risks.
Exactly.
I think a lot of it in this day and age, sponsorship revenue is the #1 source of revenue in esports, and so that's what's funding everything. And so if you are looking to put on an event, a lot of it is talking to the right people at brands who are interested in engaging youth. Gen Z, millennials, everyone's playing video games, and so find the right people to put on your event, but also finding the right people to fund it is a big thing.
Money? You're saying it takes a little bit of money to put some of these things on?
Spoiler alert, yes. So you need money. You got pros that need to be paid. You've got venues that have fees. You have production companies that cost money to put on an event, surprisingly. So, and also you need some prize money too. So, media rights in traditional sports is the #1 source of revenue, right? That's still being figured out in the esports space, so that you're not seeing these NBA level media rights deals quite yet. You're seeing sponsorship revenue, and so that's a little more volatile because a lot of that comes down to, are these sponsors receiving ROI from their sponsorship? So you need to engage the right people with these brands, but then you also need to deliver on the brand's partnership. A lot of that has to do with setting expectations with the brands as well, so that you're set up for success, so that they'll come back for your next event.
So for me personally, whenever I think about creating a big event, I actually try to take a step back first. I think a lot of people, because they see that esports is really hot right now, they think, hey, I can just set up a big tournament at Cowboy Stadium and it'll sell out in seconds. And the reality is that that's not the case, and we've seen a lot of very big players that have tons of money, marketing and clout behind them, try such models and fail abysmally, to be frank. In my opinion, the best step to creating a large-scale event actually starts with creating smaller-scale events first, listening to the communities that you're reaching out to that way, and then scaling up with the feedback from the community that you have, as well as feedback from the community that you're looking to have. That way, it's a really, really good ramp-up and a good way for you to guarantee success in the long run versus spending all your money year one, not really having any ROI on that whatsoever, and running out of runway to even think about year two.
It's a great point. It's a great point. What role does individuals play in the esports industry in contributing to a successful event? You got influencers, you got people within your own organization that can provide, a huge impact to these kind of big activations. So you can talk about the roles like an individual can play in the success of an event.
I mean, I think people are everything when it comes to doing these large-scale events, or even small scale, right? It's the community, it's people that you get to work with in the industry, it's the influencers, which is completely blown up over the last few years, that they are the voice that you want to be speaking positively from the event and everything like that. But also keep in mind that the industry is still very small and fresh and new, that you don't want to burn bridges. You want to know people, whether that's somebody that's a fan that could all of a sudden start working in the industry, or it's people that you are working with in the industry. So people are key. You want to make sure that you treat everyone the way you want to be treated.
I think when you look at just the average Joe, the fan, what can the fan do to help with esports events? Really, it's attend the events and bring your friends. One thing that we're seeing in esports is the franchising of teams and leagues. So Overwatch League and Call of Duty League, which Team Envy owns a team of both. Empire, shout out.
Shameless plug.
So one of the things that's really going to dictate the future of year one, which is 2020, is how many people are coming to these events, right? In the past, Overwatch League did all their tournaments in Los Angeles, but they had the franchise teams to create those fan bases. This year, it's so important that people come out to these venues and they support the teams in person, because that's going to really dictate, does Envy build an esports stadium, right? If you're not getting people to come, that decision could change. And so really, the ultimate thing is, as a regular person who's a fan, just tell your friends about it and attend these events yourself.
Absolutely. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, attending events is by far the most important thing I think that your everyday person can do to help support the industry. Getting involved at any possible opportunity is also huge. I mean, I'm sure that Jay will tell you right away that he probably needs tons of brand ambassadors to help out with all the efforts that his team is putting on, as they're trying to do, 7 events this year? Something like that.
7 events, DallasFuel.com.
I do not envy you, no pun intended. The other point I wanted to touch on was actually something you mentioned with influencers in particular, right? I feel like a lot of people right now, their methodology when it comes to leveraging influencers to help market an event is really, hey, we have this big name, let's slap it to the side of a digital piece of media and push it out. I really feel like it's really important for you to make it so that you give these influencers a feeling of ownership within the event itself. Because when you do that, they're able to create content to the point where they feel really bad about having to put #ad at the end of those social posts, because it's so genuine and so organic to their actual brand. And that's something that I challenge everyone in this room to do when it comes to actually their individual events and their individual attendees as well, making sure that it's such a personal experience that you can scale to as many people as possible is so critical in making sure that not only do they come and have a great time year one, but when we're talking about year two, they're not only attending the event, but actually evangelizing the event to their respective communities, whether it's just their cousins that live a state away, or if it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that they have following them on Twitter.
Yeah, that's a great point. The worst thing you could do is take a content creator and put a script in their hand and say, hey, make sure you say these things. Like, just kind of step back, give them some, talking points, bullet points, and let them do what they do. Let it come organically and naturally. So let's talk about, how do you measure success of an event? I assume, I'm going to take a wild guess and say you didn't start making these giant, elaborate events like Like, how do you measure success based on the different sizes of events that you have?
I mean, I think John actually touched on it a little earlier, but I think level setting expectations is so important for not just yourself and keeping your mental health like in check with everything you're trying to do and pull off. It's also your superiors and who's going to be paying for it. You want to make sure that they're pleased, so make sure those expectations from the get-go are in a place that is obtainable, or at least if you get close to it, you can push over the finish line to try and, you know, exceed those expectations.
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of putting on an event is attendance and viewership. Part of it is, did you estimate the right size of attendance? Because all these different video games have different sized audiences, different demographics. And so if you're expecting 20,000 people to come to an event and you have 5,000 come out, that's a major miss. If you expect 5,000 to come and they do, then you're doing something right there, right? So you're starting with, are your expectations right? And then the viewership and attendance go a long way. And then also if you're coming from the partnership side, if you're a non-endemic brand, you're looking at engagements on social and things of that nature, loyalty, positive sentiment on social. I always say that sales as an ROI for brand sponsoring esports events is further out, so that shouldn't be your main KPI, but loyalty and sentiment as far as sponsors go.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point there. Every single stakeholder in a large-scale event has different KPIs that they measure success for. So for me as a marketing person, personally how I measure event success, it's actually a pretty simple formula to say it, very, very hard to execute. It's providing an exceptional experience to as many people as possible, and then scaling that to as many people as possible. Like I said, very easy to say, very difficult to actually execute. I think that a lot of it, again, comes back to actually just listening to the attendees, listening to the community, and getting as much feedback as possible so that you can just continue to put on the best event that you possibly can for them.
Share with us what you find personally the most challenging thing about marketing a large-scale event. We'll start with Justin.
In this space, the most difficult thing, in my opinion, is, and it's so funny because every single pitch deck that Riot or Blizzard or whoever has ownership of an esports property will say to sponsors is that we have a digitally native audience. And then they will ask teams, hey, somehow your job is to get this digitally native audience who's really comfortable staying at home and viewing a stream to come out to your events. Right. I think that's by far the most difficult factor is again, because we're talking about people who are in the gaming space and because of just how great technology like streaming is, you have to be able to make sure that you're really thoughtful and smart in your marketing to convey what I would call that FOMO factor, that experience that really you can't quite feel and can't quite replicate sitting at home. Because if you're able to do that, then that's by far the best way to get that conversion, to take someone from simply being a passive viewer on the stream to being an active viewer live at your facility or at your event.
Your events are going essentially head-to-head with people's theater rooms, home theater rooms.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the theater industry is running, actually has been running into this particular challenge for so long, and it's really cool to see different chains, as a matter of fact, take an innovative approach to address this. I mean, in a world where I think theater revenue overall is down by a significant margin, you have players like the Alamo Drafthouse, for instance, who have done a really good job about making it about more than simply watching a film, but actually the film lifestyle experience, to the point where now I think that from a profit margin perspective, they're doing exceptionally well compared to just how awful and horrendous right now revenues are in the theater space.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. In fact, that's what we, at PRG, we pitch is like this in-venue experience of like, you know, how do you get people out of their homes and have something unique to experience at the event. I think the other thing that's a real big challenge is most esports tournaments, you don't have any idea how long they're going to go, except for Rocket League, right? And so, I mean, shoot, we deal with union labor and, you know, how long are these events going? You really never know. Deep into the night, you know, sometimes you can have something crazy happen. I was at a Call of Duty World League event, and somebody was calling in bomb threats, and so usually they kind of filter those things through the higher ups, But this, whoever the receptionist was just pulling the fire alarm, like, oh no, it's coming, get everybody out. So major challenge there. I think they were up till about 4 in the morning, still going through qualifiers the night before the finals. So everybody's just done. But that's probably one of the bigger things is you just don't have a set amount of time as to how long it's going to go. And then the other question is how do you engage people for that entire time? If you have a whole day, if you have a 10-hour day, how do you keep people interested? How do you keep selling merch? How do you end up making enough to pay for what it costs to put on that very long event?
I mean, the only thing I'll kind of add to that is, because these guys nailed it, is control the chaos. Because not everything is going to go perfectly, whether it's a bomb threat, which, man, that's an extreme right there, right, or just you're off schedule. I mean, it's going to
power
happen.
outage. A power outage in our case.
Internet drops. That's kind of essential for everything we do as well, right? So those things will happen. Find ways to plan ahead, and when it does happen, try and keep your composure. Something that's easier said than done.
Share with us, what is the most important thing when it comes to running a successful event or broadcast? What's like the secret sauce for running an event?
I would say there's 2 categories there. You have the players, you have the competition, and then you have the fans, right? So I think the most important thing as a whole is that the competition is pure and not affected by technology or anything going wrong. So you'll have sometimes, I've seen Call of Duty events where players afterwards are tweeting about their controller not working, and that's a nightmare, right? Because you never want the competition to be dictated by something else other than the player's ability. With the fan experience, I think it's really the challenge of just creating opportunities for fans to enjoy themselves to the point that they left home to come here, but also when you have your second event, they come back. Because I think when you look at CDL, you look at OWL, I think everybody's coming to these first matches because everybody wants to see, oh, what's the esports thing I've heard so much about? The challenge is, are they coming to your second event after they came to your first one? That's going to be a major challenge.
Yeah, I'll speak from the broadcast side of things, actually, since I did a thing or two there. So I'll say this, right? There's 2 events, and for both events, people are dressed up really, really nicely, and yet they have very drastically different feels. Now, one is a wedding, and the other is a funeral, right? In both cases, you're gonna have a lot of folks in suits, but the feeling, the vibe is very different. So why am I making such a dark metaphor? Well, it's because a lot of groups always try to shoot for the stars, like this is the biggest event in the history of everything. You need to care about this right now. And what I found is that there is actually a lot of value from a broadcast perspective to be made if you're intentionally a little bit counterculture. So a great example of this would be the Summit series. So Summit is done by a group called Beyond the Summit. They're in SoCal, and they do this really unique series that's a bit different from, say, a DreamHack event or a CDL event or an Overwatch League event, in the sense that they'll fly out top players, personalities, whether it's in Smash, Counter-Strike, Dota, and instead of having this really uptight, buttoned-up kind of feel on the broadcast, it's almost really casual, really communal. It has almost that feeling of when you're young and you have a sleepover with a bunch of friends and you're just gaming all night. It's got that kind of feeling, and as a result of that, even though there is real money on the line, it creates a really unique viewership experience, and the fans absolutely love it. So again, it really is about understanding the heart and soul of your event, reading the room, and knowing when's the time to push for things to be super proper, and when you have the right wiggle room and the right circumstances that allow you to be a little bit more unorthodox, because I really feel like those are the casts that really stand out over the course of time.
So for all of our audience out there that throws, just dynamite parties, and this is them taking it to the next level, they aspire to be in your shoes someday, your position. Give them some advice. What is the best advice you can give them?
Okay, start with me on a tough one there. It's kind of what I went back to earlier was people first. make sure you get to know people, you network appropriately, you befriend people in the industry, and I forget who said it earlier, attend these events, learn from these events, be part of that community, because nothing is worse than acting like you know what you're talking about without actually being a fan first and actually enjoying the content that you're creating. I mean, come on, going to DreamHack, working at DreamHack, I'm sure it's just fun every single time amongst all the stress that you've already got going on. It's, heck, us launching games, it's the same thing. It's super stressful, but at the end of the day, all of you are getting your hands on it, and it's super exciting to see your reactions.
I would say if you're looking to get involved, volunteer. You know, Jay could tell you, you know, you're put on a lot of events, you need a lot of help, right? Some of the people who I met when I was at GameStop, who I've continued to network with, were volunteers, you know, and I came across them, I saw that they had a strong passion for it, they knew what they were talking about, and that's enabled me to look for opportunities to work with them. One thing with young people is that in the esports world, you are in a better position than in any other industry in the world. And the reason why that is because, sad to say, new college graduates are kind of like unskilled labor, if you will, in a lot of industries. You don't know anything yet. You've got your piece of paper, you know, just the important people with experience need hands and feet to carry out their strategy. Spoiler alert, that's the truth of the world. However, in esports, the experienced professionals don't understand what the community wants and what they need. And so if you can position yourself with these experts to just sit down and have a conversation and say, this is what I think is cool, this is what sucks, this is what's not happening yet that should, you're gonna be so valuable to those people, and they're gonna find a way to incorporate you into their company. The last thing I'll say is, ultimately, all business comes down to, are you cool to hang out with? At a certain level, everybody's smart, everybody's talented, and if I'm locked with you in a room for 2 days, I want to know 2 things. Hopefully you're funny, but if you're not, at least you're cool. Secondly, when it hits the, you know, when everything hits the fan and everything's going wrong, are you going to lose it? Are you going to yell at me? Or are we going to work together to find a solution? And so, you know, the reason why there's laws about you not being able to hire your friends is because guess what? Everybody hires their friends, right? So if you position yourself well, you get to know these guys here on the stage and other people in the audience. You know, just work hard and be a cool person, you'll go far.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these two summarized it so well. When I started in this space, I mean, I was basically volunteering my time. Eventually got to a point where I was making less than minimum wage, and that was good times. But it was the grind aspect of it. I knew that I really believed in this space, and I knew that I, more than anything else, wanted to do whatever it took to play a role in this space, right? This is such a unique opportunity right now, and such an incredible, exhilarating space to be in, that if I was faced again with a dilemma of, you know, choosing to work a standard 9 to 5, constantly doing that grind, or basically working less and making little to nothing for a year and a half, 2 years, I'd pick the latter every single time. And I understand that every single person's situation is different. I was very fortunate that I had enough saved up where I could make that conscious decision to see what I could do in the space. Even if it's something where, you know, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to commit to the space full time, I promise you there are so many events, whether it's after your job, whether it's on the weekends or anything, that you can get involved with. The most valuable question you can ask as somebody who's not in the space yet is, what can I do to help? I promise you from experience, anytime people show that kind of initiative and they follow up with, what else can I do? Great things happen to those folks.
Yeah, the answer is never nothing. It's usually, sometimes it's I don't know, because things are just so frantic, but you're absolutely right. We're going to open it up to the audience for questions. If you want to come up to the mic, you can ask these guys some questions. But let's talk about some events you guys got going on in 2020. What's going on this year?
I'll just keep it real brief. If you watch the Video Game Awards, we just announced a new title from our publishing arm called Godfall. So nothing else I can say beyond that, but PlayStation 5 and PC. So not an event, but there will be at all the major community events across the country and around the world for the year. So if you're there, look for me as well.
My company actually produces 175 shows every single day globally, which is hard to fathom. But we have the Super Bowl halftime show coming up, Emmys, Oscars, Grammys, Broadway, Coachella. As far as esports goes, we're working with a number of teams in the CDL and OWL leagues to produce their home market matches. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I alluded to it at the intro section of our chat, but right now our team at DreamHack is really focused on DreamHack Anaheim, which is going to be our first ever West Coast event. Given the fact that everybody here, I'm assuming, is from Dallas, you're probably more interested in the fact that we announced DreamHack Dallas returning Memorial Day weekend 2020. So if you're looking to go to, well, thank you, appreciate you. So if you're looking to honestly have a glimpse in regards to what a very well-funded publisher-supported esports event looks like, and contrast that with maybe what a more grassroots esports event looks like, DreamHack is the perfect event. We're publisher agnostic, which means you'll see something like a $250,000 Fortnite event happening in one side of the arena, and then maybe right next to it is a Smash tournament that's happening. So it's a really good way, especially if you haven't been to an esports event, for you to really get a feel in regards to different types of communities and just how much passion people have for various different groups throughout the spectrum.
And Justin, are you the one to talk to for free tickets for that?
He'll be in
Why
the
you gotta
he'll
do
be in
this
the
to me,
parking lot
man?
later.
Why
The
you gotta
line's
do this
big
to me,
now.
man? I was.
Oh, they're for sale. Okay,
Yes.
see Justin to buy your tickets. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. I feel like a Boy Scout now. Great.
We got my friend up front. Go ahead and hit us with your question, man.
My name is Andrew, and I have a question specifically for Justin regarding DreamHack. What does it look like to schedule minor events in between major events produced by local personnel working in conjunction with the main staff?
So that's a really good question. I think when it comes to scheduling any sort of event, you have to be really mindful, again, of what's happening in the grand spectrum of things. I mean, esports right now is in a wild place where it seems like event overlap is almost necessary at this point, just because there's so many projects happening simultaneously. In my opinion, the best thing to do, again, is to be really mindful of some of the narratives and things like that, so that instead of being a burden, if you will, onto the community, especially from a viewership perspective, you're feeding very fresh narratives, more or less, that could now be leveraged to further fuel excitement for an upcoming major event, is what I'll say around that.
Thank you for your question.
Hi, my name is Kellen. I was wanting to ask about, especially at the grassroots level, crowdfunding and things like Matcherino have been such an important part of how that money gets made, and what they're looking for is, connections from the fans into those sponsors, into, the bigger ads, GeForce, all the things. How do you translate a sponsorship into, how do you engage those fans into engaging with those sponsors out after the event or at the event?
Is your question, how do you engage sponsors after an event has happened?
Fans to engage with the sponsors, get the clicks on the ads that you need, or buy the products. How do you translate that from just their name being on a title card?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways to do that. So when I was at GameStop, we did a partnership with Matcherino, so I know them very well. What we did there is, for people to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, etc. We would contribute $1 to the prize pool of the event, of the tournament that they were doing. So it was really cool because it was very grassroots, and it gave credit to GameStop for funding, but it also gave validation to the person who did it, because on the screen it would pop up, so-and-so has followed GameStop, and GameStop has, donated $1 to the prize pool. That's one way. I think content is king when it comes to most things, but especially esports. So compelling content associated with the event following is a way to extend that tail. Those are the two main relevant points there.
You want to add on to that?
Yeah. So I think that, and Kellen can correct me if I'm wrong later, I guess, after we chat, but if he's coming at it from the point of view where he is a grassroots organizer and he wants to figure out ways for his community to better engage with a sponsor, I feel like it's not really just on him, to be frank. I really feel like at the end of the day, it has to be a relationship between the grassroots community organizer as well as the company itself. I mean, at the end of the day, if the company is doing an activation it's on them to make sure that the activation is successful. And what I've seen is really critical to that is for the company to understand intimately well the genetic makeup of the attendees of this particular event, and then beyond just plastering an ad, creating an experience for them that will enrich and delight the attendee at the end of the day. Something where it doesn't feel like an ad. It feels more like an experience.
Yeah, I always tell brands in the esports space, if you want to get into it, the experience for the community needs to be better than it was without your brand. Because esports is doing just fine without your brand. And so by you just saying, hey, I'm here, buy my potato chips or whatever, does nothing. And in fact, that's going to hurt your brand because you're going to experience a backlash as a result of that. So I always say, you know, how are you helping the community, for, whether it's unique content, whether the fan experience attending an event is better because of your situation, competitive, you know, giving fans an opportunity to compete because more people play in addition to watching, and then also just use unique experience stuff. Like Complexity does this very well with the GameStop Performance Center, is, you know, being able to go behind the scenes and see how the pros train, things like that. So those are 4 different ways that brands can add value to the community, but if nothing is better for the community as a result of your brand being part of it, you should not be in it at all.
Yeah, John and I were talking about this a little bit outside before everything kicked off. It's like this education process has to happen. Esports is a circle of trust, especially when it comes to sponsors. Once you're in, but it's kind of this bouncer at the door who slides a little window open and says password. And if you call it e-gaming, obviously you don't get to come in. So it's very important that, like you said, the orgs there's a responsibility there to educate and kind of welcome them and be the liaison into the world of gaming and esports. Do you want to add on to that?
I just think I love e-gaming, you know.
God. Oh, God.
Do you put the dash too? Don't do that.
Don't do that.
No dashes and no e-gaming.
No, in reality, I think you've seen those bad ads on Twitch, right? I know it's getting away from the event, but if you're watching an event and you see ads or cuts between segments that clearly do not speak to the audience, look at that and understand, don't make those same mistakes.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Ashlyn Zurich. I'm a military officer over at Dyess Air Force Base. And so I'm part of the ground roots effort at my base to start an esports arena and start just kind of general esports for our airmen. And my biggest question, one of you mentioned it, was you got to make sure that people come back to your second event. So what are some key things that we need to hit during our first event to get people to come back? Our first one's coming up in March, and we're really trying to kind of hit the ground running and really make this bigger than just our base. We're trying to branch this out to Air Force wide. So what are some of those key things that we need to make sure we nail during that first event to get people to come back?
First of all, thank you so much for your service. Can we give her a round of applause, y'all? When it comes to your event in particular, the most important thing is really size, scope, and scale. I think that's probably the really key element that you really have to lock down first off, right? Because once you do that, then you have metrics where you can, I guess, as leadership, essentially judge this event itself. From there, I feel like a broken record saying this, but actually talking with the people who you're hoping to essentially attract with your event, both before the event and after the event, is by far the most important thing you could possibly do. Especially, and again, I'm not sure exactly what you and the rest of the leadership team's background might be, or even what games you're looking to feature at this event. But if you're able to at least have these communications, whether it's with other prominent tournament organizers and community leaders in the games that you're looking to do something with, and then you're also, beyond that, able to work with them directly as part of your initiatives and put them in positions of power to help not only execute some of the operational issues that might come up with the event, but beyond that also now have them serve as community liaisons between your event and between their community specifically. Then you have a really dynamite recipe for success, I feel, for your first year. And again, I think it's a lot better to have 100 people in a venue that suits 90 rather than having 100 people in a venue that suits 1,000, right? So starting small, I can't stress this enough, is really, really important, and then constantly listening to feedback so you can grow together is so integral.
I think a big part of it is generating FOMO, if you will. So you want to give people an experience that they can only experience there, right? Make people who didn't come last time. You want people who came the first time to come back, but maybe even more importantly, you need the people who stayed home the first time to come to the second one because they really realized it was a mistake to stay home, right? And so there's a number of different ways you can do that. You can offer opportunities for people to play with pros. That's always a really cool thing and pretty lower barrier to entry than we see in traditional sports. You're not going to, catch a football from Tom Brady, but you could sit next to Courage and play Fortnite together, sort of a thing. Also, limited merch, which is super cool, where it's just for that one event, and it's numbered or something like that. That is really, this inaugural event, and you're only able to get it there. What you can do as well with that is you have giveaways with that merch afterwards. So it's the people who didn't go and wish they had or wish they got that. Now you create a social engagement opportunity by doing a giveaway on social, sort of a thing. So those are a couple ideas. We'd really have to dig into it specifically on that specific game and who's attending and things like that to give more detail, but that's kind of a high level.
The only thing I'll say is, and Justin really nailed it with the feedback aspect of it, but you can be direct with your feedback. What I mean by that is send out a survey after or talk to people directly after, and then for the next go around, you can actually kind of flaunt the fact that something that maybe was glaring an issue, talk about that you're fixing it. TwitchCon actually kind of did this pretty on the nose with their events. They heard their feedback that everybody was like, San Diego's by far the best area for TwitchCon. Guess what? They're doing it year after year now in San Diego. Now, or they're repeating this year. I don't know about the future, but it's pretty cool to see that they're listening and they're being direct about it.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you guys so much for your time. I learned a lot just coming from the social media world. I know we kind of work hand in hand, so it's very interesting to hear. Are you guys going to be around to hang out and kind of chat a little bit more with the guys? Very cool. So they're going to stick around. You can definitely catch them. But let's give it up for these guys one time.